Rebuilding our infrastructure is vital to business. It creates good-paying jobs that, by the way, cannot be outsourced.
But a divided Congress is unlikely to go along. Meanwhile, the nation's roads and bridges continue to take a pounding. Tom Costello, NBC News, Washington.
And joining me now is one of those congressmen, Democratic representative from New York, Tim Bishop, member of the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee and also the Education and Workforce Committee. Thank you very much, Representative Bishop. Glad you're here.
Thanks for having me on.
So we are all feeling the pain of the roads this winter, and that's not even the hidden dangers that Tom Costello was just reporting about with the bridges. Will Congress act?
Well, I certainly hope so. I mean, we have to reauthorize the surface transportation bill. It expires in September. But the challenge is going to be finding a funding source that's going to give us the revenue that we need to invest in our infrastructure. The Highway Trust Fund is going to be essentially insolvent by the end of this summer. And simply the motor fuels tax doesn't bring in as much revenue as we need to make the kind of investment in improving our infrastructure that's so essential. So I'm hopeful that the Congress will give very serious consideration to what the President has proposed this week, a $302 billion infusion of support to upgrade our roads and bridges and tunnels and rail systems. And also Chairman Camp of the Ways and Means Committee has included some effort to improve infrastructure spending in his tax reform proposal.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. I want to talk about something else you're working on right now, and that is minimum wage. In fact, this past week, you filed a petition to force what I see as an up or down vote on this proposal. You want to raise it to $10.10 an hour over the next 3 years. First of all, explain to the viewers how this petition process works.
Well, a discharge petition is one of the few tools available to the minority to try to move legislation that the majority is not interested in moving. If we get 218 signatures on the discharge petition, that's 50% of the House plus one. By the rules of the House, the legislative measure comes to the floor of the House for immediate consideration. So it's one way of moving a piece of legislation that otherwise the majority is going to keep bottled up in committee.
Okay. Have you counted the votes that an increase would have? And in my research here, I read that you're intending to reach out to 7 Republicans who signed a letter in favor of minimum wage, though that was 7 years ago of raising the minimum wage. Yeah. And that includes Peter King, who's one of your colleagues from New York.
Well, here's our numbers. There are 190 Democrats that have signed the discharge petition so far. When the minimum wage bill passed in 2007, it passed with 82 Republican votes. Some 35 or 40 of those Republicans are still in the House of Representatives. So we're going to reach out certainly to the 9 Democrats that have not yet signed, and then we're going to be reaching out to as many Republicans as we possibly can to see if we can bring them on board. We're convinced that if we can get the 218 signatures and get this legislation to the floor, we're convinced it will pass. As I say, increases in the minimum wage have historically passed with pretty strong bipartisan support. That was certainly the case in 2007, and I think it can be the case again. We just have to get to this threshold of 218.
But you yourself were quoted recently, sir, saying that the petition is the only tool you have to get a vote. Does that tell you anything about the country and even more the democratic process and its desire for this change? Well,
70% of America supports increasing the minimum wage. The House of Representatives is fond of referring to itself as the people's house. So if we really are the people's house, we should be responsive to what 70% of America is telling us. That's certainly my message to my colleagues in the House on both sides of the aisle. It is one of the few tools that we have. The majority controls the floor schedule. The majority controls the means by which, or the process by which, legislation moves from committee to the floor. And this is a way of forcing the majority to do something that, by all appearances, they're not remotely interested in doing, which is giving America a raise. We need to give America a raise.
Democratic Congressman from New York, Tim Bishop, good luck with this. We'll be watching. Thanks so much.
Thanks.